Here's the finger I'll give you. Oh.
At least you can't say he never lifts a finger. Jeannie Moe, CNN, New York.
Thank you so much for joining us. Anderson starts now.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with breaking news. Another plea deal, and this time it's a Russian. Accused Russian spy Maria Butina is now cooperating with federal prosecutors after agreeing to a plea deal, according to a source familiar with the matter. Now, this is separate from the Robert Mueller investigation, but the news comes on a day when there are new and looming questions hanging over the presidency after Friday night's court filings from Mueller and the Southern District of New York. From court filings, public statements, and reporting from CNN and other news outlets, we now know that at least 16 associates of candidate Trump had contacts with Russians during the campaign or transition. The president and his associates repeatedly denied any contacts with Russians during the campaign, of course, and transition. For more now on how the new plea deal with the accused Russian spy Maria Butina may fit into what is becoming a very intricate puzzle, we go to Sarah Murray in Washington. So what do we know, first of all, about this plea deal?
Well, first of all, it's not final. I mean, they have the outlines of a plea agreement, but nothing is done until they show up in court on Wednesday, enter this plea, and the judge accepts it. But the cooperation here is very interesting. I mean, Maria Butina is someone that prosecutors say was working here in the United States. She was infiltrating GOP political circles. She was ingratiating herself with the National Rifle Association, and she was doing all of that to try to advance Russian interests. So they're going to be interested in her contacts with her Russian handlers. One of those is Alexander Torshin, who was a banker in Moscow. He stepped down from that position. They're going to want to know more about that. They're also going to want to know about her relationship with another American. This is a man named Paul Erickson, a man she has said was her boyfriend. And they want to know what his role was in her sort of plot here in Washington, as well as whether he may have committed fraud in South Dakota. He's under investigation there, too, Anderson.
So just to be clear, I mean, this is the same woman who asked a question of then candidate Trump during the campaign, which I want to play for our viewers.
I'm visiting from Russia, so my question...
Putin. Good friend of Obama, Putin.
My
he
question...
likes Obama a lot. Go ahead.
If you would be elected as a president, what will be your foreign politics, especially in the relationships with my country? And do you want to continue the politics of sanctions that are damaging of both economy, or you have any other ideas?
Okay. Obama gets along with nobody. The whole world hates us. I know Putin, and I'll tell you what, we get along with Putin. I believe I would get along very nicely with Putin. Okay?
Do we know this? He didn't know Putin. I mean, he never met Putin. He now admits. Anyway, do we know the significance of that question and how candidate Trump just happened to pick her of all the people out of the crowd? I mean, was that just a coincidence?
You know, we don't have any indication that it was anything other than coincidence that he happened to call on this woman who is now being accused of being a Russian spy. But it is obviously a very bizarre circumstance, and it was so early in the presidential campaign for then candidate Trump to be weighing in on issues with Russia, and it really gives us this sort of first early look into how Donald Trump wanted to have a friendlier relationship with Putin, a friendlier relationship with Moscow, and obviously we've seen that narrative last for years now, Anderson.
Yeah, I know Putin. Sarah Murray, thanks very much. This news is breaking in the middle of what seems to be an increasingly perilous time for the president. If you can judge by two tweets today, a duo of frenetic missives filled with misdirection and inaccuracies, and I'm quoting here, Democrats can't find a smoking gun tying the Trump campaign to Russia after James Comey's testimony. No smoking gun. No collusion at Fox News. That's because there was no collusion. So now the Dems go to a simple private transaction, wrongly call it a campaign contribution, which it was not. But even if it was, it is only a civil case like Obama's, but it was done correctly by a lawyer, and there would not even be a fine. Lawyer's liability if he made a mistake. Not me. Cohen just trying to get his sentence reduced. Witch hunt. I'm quick keeping him honest. It's not the Dems, it's the Southern District of New York. It's not a simple private transaction, as President Trump said right there. It's multiple alleged felony hush payments, one to a former Playboy playmate, the other to a porn star, which the president and the people around him have repeatedly lied about over and over and over again. Once again, we don't know about collusion, but some may be tempted to say, where there's smoke, there's fire. It's an old saying. Joining us now is CNN Chief White House Correspondent Jim Acosta. So, Jim, what are you learning about where the president's head is right now about, these smocking payments?
It's pretty smoky over here at the White House tonight, Anderson. I did talk to a source close to the president who said earlier this evening that the president has expressed concern that he could be impeached over some of these issues that you just talked about. He has said it's a, quote, real possibility, according to this source. But at this point, he doesn't see it as being certain. You saw in that tweet there where he refers to these payments as being a transaction. That obviously is simplifying things a great deal, because Michael Cohen has said, and he's pled guilty to this, that he believes, and he has said, that he was directed to make those payments by the president. Now, where things go from here, I talked to other sources close to the White House. One source who says that they do believe, there are advisors who believe inside the White House that the one item that could stick with this president are these alleged campaign finance violations, these campaign financial crimes that have been alleged in the Michael Cohen case. But at this point, they don't believe inside the White House that it's going to be enough to get a conviction in the Senate and a removal from office vote in the Senate. Might be enough in a Democratic House, obviously, but they don't think it'll trigger the kind of bipartisan support for impeachment in the House that could really trigger some very serious action over in the Senate for the president. Anderson.
He's also obviously continuing to say no collusion whatsoever.
That's right. And just a very important caveat in all of this, when we talk to sources over here who say, you know, the president is concerned about impeachment, they are basing all of these comments, they're basing all of their theorizing at this point as to what might happen on what they think they know right now. So some of this is wishful thinking. And so when the president goes out there and repeats these talking points, no collusion and so on, that is based on essentially redacted documents coming from the special counsel's office, some of which we saw on Friday night. And so at this point, I think a lot of this, it sort of goes back to what Donald Rumsfeld used to say back during the Bush administration: there are known knowns and known unknowns. And at this point, I think even people inside the White House recognize they just don't know what Robert Mueller is going to do, and they can base what they think is going to happen at this point on what they understand to be the case. But obviously, Robert Mueller is not really finished with his investigation at this point. But Anderson, it is important to know, I did talk to a source close to the president who has said, he has expressed to advisors that he does think impeachment is a, quote, real possibility. He just doesn't know if it's certain at this point.
Is it, brother, is that a drum, like a protester drum somewhere in the distance I'm hearing?
It is.
Okay.
There is music being played out on Pennsylvania Avenue. Don't see any smoke, as some might call it, over here. But those
I just want to make sure it
who
wasn't
show
like
up every
bongos
night.
being played in the White House itself. It's actually out on the street.
No, there's a steady drum beat in Washington, but tonight it's just protesters.
All right, Jim Acosta, thanks very much. The question now, of course, is what Democrats in Congress do with these allegations. Congressman Jerry Nadler of the Judiciary Committee was asked if it's proven that the president directed or coordinated with Michael Cohen to commit these felonies, would they be impeachable offenses?
They would be impeachable offenses. Whether they are important enough to justify an impeachment is a different question, but certainly they'd be impeachable offenses because even though they were committed before the president became president, they were committed in the service of fraudulently obtaining the office. That would be that would be an impeachable offense.
With me now is Democratic Congressman Ted Deutsch of Florida, a member of the Judiciary, Ethics, and Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman, thanks for being with us. Are these, in your opinion, impeachable offenses? And if so, are they enough to justify an impeachment, if you think?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Anderson. Look, here's what we've learned over the past few days. We have learned that there is now evidence that the President of the United States engaged in a felony to obtain the office of president, that there is further, that's in the payments to these women, accusers. Then there's further the evidence now of the use of his corporations to pay them off, thus the cover-up. So when you look at those two things, you realize why the president is facing such pressure now and why the president is at risk of both political jeopardy. He's in political jeopardy and in criminal jeopardy. These are felonies that we're talking about. As it relates to impeachment, Anderson, the Constitution could not be any clearer. Impeachment is the appropriate remedy for bribery, for treason, for high crimes and misdemeanors. It speaks for itself. We only know a fraction of what Robert Mueller knows. I think we have to wait, look at what Robert Mueller delivers to us. The American people will review it. But there is every reason for the president to be very concerned about what continues to come out of this investigation as it relates to him, his legal jeopardy, and the potential for things to get only worse for him as this goes forward.
What is the difference, though, between an impeachable offense and one that justifies an impeachment? I mean, are there certain crimes that a president can commit that should be overlooked?
No, of course not. And no one's above the law. And I think that point is particularly important when you look at those tweets that the president put out today. Those simple private transactions that he referred to, the criminal code is full of simple private transactions. And if you're guilty of one of them, in this case, a felony that may have been committed in order for him to become president, then he has to be held accountable. The whole process of impeachment is a political decision, which is why we have to wait, I believe, until the Mueller report comes out. So we know from a fraction of what we've seen how concerning this is and the potential violation of laws that would lead us to move forward. But we have not yet seen the totality, which there's every reason to believe when you look at the potential obstruction of justice that we've already seen, the dangling of pardon for Manafort, the potential obstruction by firing Comey. There's so much more that we have yet to see that I think is going to provide the blueprint for what Congress does next.
I want to play something that your colleague, Congressman Adam Schiff, said over the weekend for our viewers.
Sure.
My takeaway is there's a very real prospect that on the day Donald Trump leaves office, the Justice Department may indict him, that he may be the first president in quite some time to face the real prospect of jail time.
I'm wondering what you make of that. I mean, does it behoove Democrats at all at this point to be talking about things like possible prison time for somebody once they leave office?
I don't think it's unreasonable to make clear what the president himself has said, what Democrats and Republicans alike say over and over, and to make sure that it has meaning, and that is that no one is above the law. If the president engaged in felonies, if he committed felonies in order to win the White House, further, if he committed felonies to cover up those crimes in order to win the White House, then those felonies, if it turns out that that's what happened, of course the president has to be held accountable. That's what Adam Schiff was saying, and certainly it's consistent with what everyone believes about the way this country should work. No one is above the law.
A lot of House Democrats have been talking about, their committees investigating various aspects of the president, this presidency once they're in the majority. Where is the line, do you think, between holding a president accountable, as you've been talking about, and going on to use one of the president's favorite phrases, a witch hunt that might actually backfire on Democrats?
Well, the Congress has a responsibility to provide oversight, Anderson. That's our job. Unfortunately, for the past 2 years, the Republican leadership on the Judiciary Committee has instead seen its job as defending the president. Every crazy tweet, every lie he's told, there's been a refusal to actually provide the necessary oversight that the Constitution requires us to provide. So it's not, we shouldn't be guided by how the president characterizes anything in tweets. We ought to be guided by the facts, by the indictments, by the lies that we've seen by this president about his connections to Russia, which we now know just get deeper and deeper. That's got to guide us in what we do on behalf of the American people, not what the president chooses to tweet out in a moment of real concern about himself and his future.
Congressman Ted Deutsch, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Anderson.
A lot more to talk about. Joining me are Jeffrey Toobin, Carrie Cordero, Steve Cortez, and Robbie Muck. Jeff, I want to start with the breaking news tonight that Russia, the person being accused of being a Russian spy, Maria Butina, is cooperating with federal prosecutors. At least there's a deal on the table. How significant is that?
Well, it depends what she knows and who she had contact with. Obviously, it is significant. Yet another person in the Trump orbit, in particular someone who was very closely associated with the National Rifle Association, she is pleading guilty to a serious crime. It's not espionage, but it's failing to register as a foreign agent. And she was in touch with all sorts of people, including asking that very significant question at that press conference in 2015 of the president. Did she have contact with the Trump campaign? What did they know? Who paid her? Where did her money go? All of that, presumably now, federal prosecutors will learn because she has agreed to cooperate.
And Jeff, just turning to the president's tweets about his payments to Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels, he calls them simple private transactions. Are those the words you would use to describe them?
I would not use that. I mean, remember the timing of these private transactions. They were like within weeks of Election Day. I think we all can imagine how politically explosive it would have been if either or both of these women had come forward. So this was campaign money. This was money going to elect Donald Trump. That's why Michael Cohen had to plead guilty to a crime, because they didn't treat it in the way campaign contributions are supposed to be treated. You know, whether Donald Trump, as Congressman Schiff suggested, will have to go to prison because of this is, you know, I think it's a bit premature. But to say they are simple, contracts between two people is far, far from the truth.
Steve, do you believe that these were simple private transactions? And nothing to do with the campaign?
And Jeffrey, I have to push back on that point, because I think had these been revealed, and we don't know, of course, it's a hypothetical, but let's say these had been revealed. Let's say it was revealed that McDougal, a Playboy centerfold, said that a decade before she had an affair, an extramarital affair with then candidate Trump. Do you really believe that that would have swayed the election in favor of Hillary Clinton? I mean, none of us on Team Trump, and I don't think any of the 63 million people who voted for Donald Trump thought they were voting for Francis of Assisi. So I just don't believe that that would have been material to the campaign.
So why didn't they report it? Why didn't they make it public the way they should have under the law?
Because it was not a campaign contribution. No, because it's not a campaign contribution. And the FEC is very clear on this. The law is clear on this. If it could reasonably be made, if that expenditure could reasonably be made, irrespective of the campaign, and that is certainly true of these transactions. There's a lot of reasons why you would want these women to keep their stories private, even if they're not telling the truth, by the way. You might still want them to keep these stories confidential. There are many, many reasons outside of politics why you would do that, and the FEC is clear that that means it's not a campaign contribution.
So as you point out, this was an affair was several years earlier. So it was just an incredible coincidence that the money happened to change hands just on the eve of the election?
No, and that's... Listen, that's a good point, but no, that part is not coincidental, because the reason these women, the reason there was an impetus for them to come forward, of course, was the fact that Donald Trump was achieving fame, even though he was already a very famous person. He was achieving fame and notoriety like he had never seen once he became the Republican nominee. So that encouraged them to come out of the woodworks, but that doesn't mean that, again, on the side of Trump, it doesn't mean that there weren't several reasons why, personal life, business life, politics, you would want this to stay confidential, and that doesn't make it a campaign contribution.
Carrie,
it's illegal. It's allowed.
Carrie, how do you see this?
So I actually think, Anderson, that the campaign finance part of it and the payments to the women is somewhat of a distraction from the big issue of the coordination with Russian government and Russian government surrogates if we take the big special counsel investigation. I understand that the Southern District of New York has a responsibility to enforce the law, and they obviously believe that they have a reasonable likelihood of succeeding on the merits of a campaign finance case. And so I think it's possible that the president has potential criminal exposure for it, perhaps when he leaves office at some point in the future. But from the documents that were filed on Friday, I think the more important parts from the national security perspective and from a future potential impeachment proceeding perspective is the fact that Michael Cohen coordinated his statements, his lying statements to Congress and to the special counsel's office with others, and that Paul Manafort was apparently either in touch or trying to be in touch with the Trump administration up until early 2018. And so what we're learning is that there were so many different contacts between the campaign and Russian government officials and Russian surrogates, and importantly, Trump campaign officials and those now in the administration have been trying to cover it up. And so the question becomes, why were they trying to hide the Moscow project? Why have they been lying to Congress? Why have they actually coordinated their lying statements? And so from the perspective of a potential jeopardy for the presidency, I think it's all the obstruction of justice and potentially what's revealed about whether or not they actually coordinated with Russian efforts to affect the election.
I got to get a quick break, but I'll come to Robbie Mook as soon as we come back, because we haven't heard from Robbie yet. We'll also have more on what the president is said to be thinking about the possibility of impeachment. Also ahead, why the president is said to be, and I'm quoting here, super pissed. It's a quote from a source familiar with his mood. Another one said he's humiliated, and this is not directly related to the Russian investigation or the hush money payments for his alleged affairs. Details ahead.
Anderson Cooper 360, brought to you by The Favorite, a royal tale of loyalty, power, and deception from director Yorgos Lanthimos, starring Olivia Colman as Queen Anne and Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz as the women of the court vying for her favor. In theaters everywhere, Friday.
The Favorite is now nominated for the Golden Globe Award for Best Picture of the Year.
Oh, I did not know that.
Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz are brilliantly witty.
You actually think you have won, haven't I?
And Olivia Colman is nothing short of sublime.
But it's fun to be queen sometimes.
It's more pure, devious fun than any other great movie this year.
Is it a bit like a party?
It is not like a party.
I think it is like a party.
A perfect analogy.
The Favorite, rated R.
Coaching means making tough choices.
Jim, you're in.
But when you have high blood pressure and need cold medicine that works fast, the choice is simple. Coricidin HBP is the #1 brand that gives powerful cold symptom relief without raising your blood pressure. Coricidin HBP.
Hi, I just wanted to tell you that Chevy won a J.D. Power Dependability Award for its midsize car, the Chevy Malibu. I forgot, Chevy also won a J.D. Power Dependability Award for its light-duty truck, the Chevy Silverado. Oh, and since the Chevy Equinox and Traverse also won, Chevy is the only brand to earn the J.D. Power Dependability Award across cars, trucks, and SUVs 3 years in a row. Third time's a charm.
You okay there, Kurt?
We're about to move.
Karate helps relieve some of the house buying stress.
At least you don't have to worry about homeowners insurance. Call Geico.
Geico? Helps with homeowners insurance?
Been doing it for years.
I'm calling Geico right now.
Good idea.
Get to know Geico and see how easy homeowners and renters insurance can be.
Our dad was in the hospital.
Because of smoking.
It was still hard to have a cigarette.
Had to.
But then we were like,
What are we doing?
The Nicoderm CQ patch helps prevent your urge to smoke all day. Nicoderm CQ. You know why, we know how.
Hey, Jen, which tie says trustworthy but also fun?
Gold down, oil up. Oil down, gold up.
This is too busy. We need to make sure people can actually use this stuff.
Which one says hours of free live streaming coverage without cable or subscription fees?
Aluminum. Aluminum.
You ready, Zach?
Oh, we're ready.
Welcome to the show. Let's make finance make sense.
Whoa! I love you, Santa!
Don't you wish you could still get that excited about something?
For that Christmas morning feeling, you've got Wayfair. Shop everything home at wayfair.com.
Are you going to row?
No, are you?
The boy rows.
I don't row.
What do you mean you don't row? Everybody rows.
Then go ahead and row.
Pick up that oar.
It was your idea to get into a rowboat.
Pick up that oar.
This is going very well.
Grubhub is a delivery app that lets you order any food your heart and stomach desire. So you can order this, or maybe a little bit of this. Order from over 85,000 restaurants nationwide. Grubhub, restaurants you love, delivered.
How to quit sugary soda with a few imps.
Step 1.
Buy SodaStream.
Step 2.
Enjoy great taste with less sugar.
Step 3.
Maybe 2 steps is enough.
Make sparkling water and help save the planet, risk-free for 30 days. For the best deal of the season, go to SodaStream.com and save up to 40%. Get your SodaStream today. SodaStream can be found at these fine retailers.
The President of the United States sees it as a real possibility that he could be impeached after Democrats take control of the House. That's the word tonight from a source close to him. The source also saying the president isn't certain it will happen, but he's expressed concern. Back with Jeff Toobin, Carrie Cordero, Steve Cortez, and Robbie Mook. Robbie, I mean, at the same time we're hearing the president thinks there's a possibility he could be impeached, there's also reporting that the White House is adopting a kind of shrug shoulder strategy for the Mueller findings. They believe that most of the GOP base voters will believe whatever the president tells them to believe. Do you think they're right?
I worry that they're right, to be honest with you, because I just want to pick up on a point that Carrie made just before the break, that if we focus on all these details, sometimes we lose the bigger picture. I think that the scope of what's going on here, both the degree to which the Trump campaign was committing crimes, the degree to which the president himself was part of those crimes, but also the degree to which the Russians were infiltrating the Trump campaign, the NRA, other Republican groups, I think that's going to continue to expand. And if we get bogged down in all the individual constituent pieces, we're going to lose sight here that we had a major national security incident. These influences may still be embedded in our political fabric here in our country, and that should be really disturbing to anybody. So I think everybody needs to wake up. Pull back, look at the big picture, and then obviously we need to wait and see what sort of details are in Mueller's report, and we need to track these other indictments and investigations that are going on through the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Steve, to that point, does it raise any concerns with you that I think by CNN's count now 16 people in Trump world had contacts with Russians, either during the campaign or in the transition?
Right. My answer is yes and no. So, look, do we need more light shined upon that? Yes, I believe we do. And so, yes, there's some worry there. Some of it is not worrisome at all because, for instance, it was during the transition when it's incredibly normal to have those kind of conversations with foreign powers once you're already elected. But look, I think we need to learn more. And I would say to those of us who support the president, we can't be complacent, clearly. And it's not time to have an exoneration party. But then I would also caution those who can't stand the president, including a lot of people in the Congress, people like Congressman Schiff, who are ready right now to put him in a jail suit and put him in a cell. I would caution them that we haven't seen anything even close to criminality. But look, I do think, to your opening point, I think that at this point impeachment is a given. I really believe that before the election, if the Democrats took control, now that they've taken control, I think that's a fait accompli. It is happening. I think the White House and those of us, who support the Trump agenda, we need to start to prepare for the legal and communication strategy to take on impeachment and to eventually, I think, turn it into a positive once we get to the Senate. So that to me is the reality. I'm not sure the White House gets that yet.
That is absolutely absurd to say that impeachment is a certainty. The Democrats, and I've spoken to a lot of the people involved here, they know that in 1998 the Republicans impeached Bill Clinton knowing full well that he would never get removed from office. There were never going to be 67 votes in the Senate, and the Democrats have vowed not to repeat that mistake. They're not going to repeat that mistake. There is no support for going forward with impeachment among the leadership of the House Democrats under current circumstances. So the idea that impeachment is a certainty is just absurd. It's just like trying to gin up the Republican base.
And to build on what Jeffrey's saying...
No, I don't disagree with your logic, by the way, but that would presuppose that the Democrats are going to vote based on logic and based on the law. Impeachment is a political proceeding. And because it is a political proceeding, and because their entire agenda, they don't have an agenda outside of resistance to this president. And because they are defined by resistance, they will vote for impeachment. And I agree with you. Ultimately, it will backfire on them. But they're heading there. I mean, to me, it's a certainty that they're heading there.
Robbie?
If I can just level set here, the job of members of Congress, what they are paid to do, in part, is oversight of the executive branch. The Republicans, for almost 2 years now, have completely abdicated that responsibility. They have not done their job. They've cheated the taxpayers by not doing their job. Democrats are going to be committed to doing the oversight, which is very badly needed. But to Jeffrey's point, Democrats are not going to go way out on a limb and unilaterally vote to impeach this president. It's too early to even talk about impeachment right now. We don't even have Mueller's report. I think Democrats need to be cautious about even suggesting that yet. But once we have the facts, a determination will be made. And I promise you this, Democrats will not give Republicans the luxury of abdicating their responsibility again. Democrats will wait day in and day out, demand that Republicans do what is their constitutional duty, join with Democrats, and hold the administration accountable.
Kerry, I mean, for those who believe that a president can't be indicted, say, I mean, he's a participant in an extraordinary serious crime of some sort, something far more serious than campaign violations, they believe he still cannot be indicted, correct?
The prevailing legal opinion from the Justice Department is that a sitting president cannot be indicted while he's sitting. So there could be a sealed indictment that would then come forward once he left office. But there also is an argument, I think, that a new opinion could be written that would take into account the way that this president conducts himself in office. In other words, a significant part of the original OLC opinions that were issued by the Justice Department, which are historical, and there was one written in the Nixon years, another one that's authoritative that was written in the Clinton years, talk about the fact that an indictment would affect the president into not being able to carry out his duties. This president, as a factual matter, spends a lot of his time actually doing things that are not presidential. Tweeting, executive time, golfing, all of those things. And I actually think there's an argument that that could play against the historical interpretation. But in any event, with respect to this question of impeachment, I think there is a strong argument that politically, because impeachment is a political matter, the Democrats in Congress are not going to want to proceed on these payments to the women. What does matter is whether or not there was a coordinated obstruction effort, whether the president lied in his written answers to the special counsel, and whether or not it turns out that the Trump campaign coordinated any of the efforts with the Russian government, which we already know through the indictments tried to affect the election. Those are the matters that Republicans will have a very hard time turning away from.
Jeff, very quickly, you were on this program, I think, a couple months ago saying that the Kavanaugh appointment was basically the beginning of the unraveling of Roe v. Wade. Today, though, Kavanaugh sided with the liberal justices on a Planned Parenthood case. Do you still believe what you said in light of how he sided today?
I absolutely did. That was a preliminary procedural ruling that was not a ruling on the merits. It wasn't even an opinion in the case. He didn't write an opinion. Keep your eyes out. Keep your eyes peeled for abortion cases. They don't want to engage. That's what really the message was today from the 6 justices in the majority. They don't want to engage on the subject of abortion yet. But Donald Trump is going to get what he wanted from Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh.
All right. Thanks, everyone. While the Mueller investigation continues, sources say the president is frustrated, humiliated, even, and I'm quoting here, super pissed, according to one source, not over the Russian probe itself, instead over his search for a new chief of staff. More on that in a moment.
This is big. T-Mobile is offering the awesome iPhone XR with an unlimited plan for just $40 a month.
Unlimited with the new iPhone XR?
Yeah, iPhone XR included.
For $40? That is big.
It's time to take a different look at SiriusXM. Listen now with new subscriptions as low as $5 a month plus fees. Or subscribe to one of our best packages and get a free all-new Amazon Echo Dot. Hear commercial-free music plus sports, talk, comedy, and more. Visit SiriusXM.com/GetSXM or call to get complete offer details for your car, your home, or anywhere you are. Get a great offer at SiriusXM.com/GetSXM.
The young Queen of Scots claims my throne.
Kill her hope. Witness the untold true story of a rivalry that changed the course of history.
Should you murder me, you murder your queen.
Mary, Queen of Scots. Rated R. Now in select theaters.
Hiring? It's a big deal. Finding the right candidates can take up lots of your time and energy. But not on Indeed. Millions of great people are using Indeed every single day. People with every possible combination of skill and experience. And with filters to help you find them faster, whatever type of candidates you're looking for, you'll find them on Indeed. Accelerate your hiring even more with a $50 credit to start your first job post with premium placement on Indeed.
With the United Explorer card, I get rewarded wherever I go. Going out for a bite? Rewarded. Going new places? Anytime.
Rewarded. Learn more at theexplorercard.com.
At the Joseph A. Bank Super Tuesday sale, save up to 70% off everything. All suits on sale starting at $199. Dress shirts, $29. Plus take an extra 60% off clearance. From stitch to store, that's the bank way.
Are you ready for it? Yeah! It's like CNN gone wild.
TMI.
Too much.
She's doing it again.
No cover-up spray here. It's the irresistibly fresh scent of Febreze Air Effects. Cheaper aerosols can cover up odors, bearing the smell in a flowery fog. Switch to Febreze Air Effects. Febreze eliminates even the toughest odors from the air, and it uses an all-natural propellant to leave behind a pleasant scent you'll love. Use anywhere odors can spread. Freshen up. Don't cover up. Febreze Air Effects.
Let's face it, everybody hates fees. Now, SoFi has no fees on personal loans. That's right, no fees on loans to remodel your bathroom. No fees on loans to consolidate your credit card debt. See? No fees just feels good. Booyah! If you've got the drive, you can do a lot with no fees on personal loans. Booyah.
This is CNN, the most trusted name in news.
There is breaking news in the search for a new White House chief of staff. Multiple sources say that President Trump is frustrated with how it's going, with one source even saying the president is, quote, super pissed and humiliated. That's after he was turned down by the vice president's chief of staff, Nick Ayers. He's not the only one saying thanks but no thanks. Several contenders say that they are not interested. Now, keep in mind, the job itself brings its own challenges, but in this chaotic White House, whoever replaces John Kelly faces an even tougher mission with the looming Mueller investigation, an incoming Democratic-controlled House, and dealing with the president. Joining me are Obama White House veteran and CNN senior political commentator David Axelrod and our chief political analyst Gloria Borger. Gloria, I know you've got new reporting on how the president is dealing with this entire process, what his mood has been like.
He's frustrated. He's not happy. I was told that he feels somewhat humiliated by the way this has played out publicly. You know, this is a president who says the best people want to work for my administration, and suddenly you want to offer a very high-level job that most people would jump at in any other administration, and he gets turned down, and everybody knows about it, and he doesn't have any plan B, and so he's not happy.
Yeah, I mean, David, it is hard to kind of, you know, reconcile the president who says that he only hires the, you know, the best and the brightest and the smartest people out there, and that there are backlogs of people who want to work for his administration with the reality.
Yeah, I have one word for him, Anderson: Craigslist. I mean, nobody wants this job, and there's a reason for that. Who has left this administration, save maybe Nikki Haley, who has left this administration with their reputation intact? People watch what's going on, and more than that, they anticipate what the next couple of years are going to be like. And if they're smart, they understand that there may be a suggestion that they can control what happens in that White House. But there's only one person who controls what happens in that White House, and he is an unmanageable client, and that's the President of the United States. So for all those reasons, people are changing their numbers, going on a long vacation, doing anything they can to avoid his call right now.
Yeah, I mean, Gloria, it seems, I mean, to David's point, both a combination of a horrible working environment, just in terms of you know, how the place is set up, unlike any other White House, you know, certainly that in modern times, and the potential for long-term career damage.
Right, and I'm told that was part of Nick Ayers' calculation. I mean, you're kind of stepping into the unknown here because you don't know what's going to unfold with the Mueller investigation. Do you want to be on top of that? Do you want to suddenly have to
buried under it?
Right. Do you want to do that? I sort of doubt it. And, you know, Ayers had wanted to be there for a short period of time, and the president wanted somebody like Ayers who's got political sensibilities, because the president actually understands what he's heading into for the next 2 years with a democratically controlled House and with the Mueller investigation. And, you know, he always criticized Kelly for not having, you know, political sensibility. But I think Ayers had enough political sensibility to say, no way I'm stepping into this mess.
David, I mean, are there indications the president wants someone who is truly good at running the West Wing, dealing with Congress, doing everything that the job traditionally entails? Or do you think he wants someone spoiling for a political fight, potentially an impeachment fight, or someone who's just going to kowtow to his every wish?
Well, I think it's a combination of those things, but I think it was a tell that he wanted Ayers in that job, because I think he views his next 2 years as a long fight for re-election through very difficult circumstances, and he wants someone who has the political sophistication to kind of meld the White House with his political operation to try and save his political career. I think he misses the other piece of this, which is that the incoming from Congress is going to be very, very intense. As you guys have mentioned, the Mueller seems to be breathing down his neck, and that is a huge, huge managerial problem for whomever takes that job. But I maintain the biggest problem is still the fact that you may be able to manage down to some degree, although you plainly can't manage the president's daughter and her husband, who are key players there. But what you absolutely can't do is manage up, because Donald Trump is going to tweet, he is going to speak, he is going to do all those things that he thinks got him here. And in this situation and in this environment, that's a very perilous thing. So you're left there helpless, but with a big title.
You know, and Donald Trump wants to be his own chief of staff.
Right.
He wants to be his own lawyer, too. You think his lawyers like the fact that he's tweeting about Mueller? Of course not. And he will continue doing what he wants to do, and there's no way to control him. So he's his own chief of staff. He just needs somebody to kind of run the ship.
All right.
Maybe.
Gloria Borger, thanks. David Axelrod as well. Thank you. Up next, not 1, not even 5 or 10, you got to go higher. More about our latest reporting on the number of associates of President Trump who had contact with Russians during the campaign or transition, when 360 continues.
I always felt that my comedy was just to make things be all right.
It's the story of my life.
The holidays are here. Make the most of the road home. Hurry in to receive a credit of up to $3,000 on select models now through January 2nd.
Opportunity is everywhere. Like here, where nothing stands between you and your best friends.
There's no excuse for what they did to you. It's a hate crime.
It's a miracle he survived.
I got your back.
Based on an inspirational true story.
They knocked me down, but I've created a world where I can heal.
Hey, looking good.
Welcome to Marwin.
Welcome to healing.
You need to face those jerks who beat you up.
Welcome to hope.
I have my friends, and they can't take that away from me.
Hell yeah.
Welcome to Marwin. Rated PG-13.
This
is my body proof.
Proof of less joint pain.
And clearer skin.
Proof that I can fight psoriatic arthritis.
With Humira.
Humira targets and blocks a specific source of inflammation that contributes to both joint and skin symptoms. It's proven to help relieve pain, stop further irreversible joint damage, and clear skin in many adults. Humira is the #1 prescribed biologic for psoriatic arthritis.
Humira can lower your ability to fight infections. Serious and sometimes fatal infections, including tuberculosis and cancers, including lymphoma, have happened, as have blood, liver, and nervous system problems, serious allergic reactions, and new or worsening heart failure. Tell your doctor if you've been to areas where certain fungal infections are common, and if you've had TB, hepatitis B, are prone to infections, or have flu-like symptoms or sores. Don't start Humira if you have an infection.
Ask your rheumatologist about Humira.
Go to mypsaproof.com to see proof in action.
We are rebellious, trendsetters, one of a kind. We are what we wear. American Style, coming in January on CNN.
Having dental problems, it affected everything, including my ability to be the best parent I could be. I used to go to these events and I just wanted to sit in the back. As a father, it really hurts. It's your mouth, but you feel bad from head to toe. So when I found clear choice, everything changed right there and then.
Our job is to cater to your needs. Our job is to find a solution. After the dental implant procedure, there's a transformation that happens almost immediately. Having us all under one roof really makes it easy for the patient.
I can be that person that I want to be for my son. This is me now. Being able to go back out and do all the things that I wouldn't or couldn't do before.
This is CNN, the most trusted name in news.
Back to our breaking news. The top of the hour, accused Russian spy Maria Butina is cooperating with federal prosecutors after agreeing to a plea deal, according to sources familiar with the matter. Now, again, this is not directly connected to the Mueller probe, but it does come after new filings in the Russia probe and, of course, from the Southern District of New York on Friday, leading to new questions for Team Trump. And as we mentioned earlier, by CNN's count, we now know of at least 16 associates of candidate Trump who had contact with Russians during the campaign or the transition. And this comes from public statements, from court filings, and reporting from CNN and other news outlets. As we touched on already, all of this, even as the president and his associates repeatedly denied any contacts with Russians during the campaign or the transition. Joining me for their take is Tom Hamburger of The Washington Post and Steve Hall, a retired CIA chief of Russia operations and a CNN national security analyst. This plea deal with Butina, it's yet another Russian who'd actively been trying to influence the U.S. political system, according to authorities. But who she was influencing and how she was doing it, that we really still don't know. Is that correct?
Well, it's not. It's certainly not clear. We do know that she's changing her plea. What exactly she's pleading to and who she influenced precisely, we don't know. We do know some of her history. She was interacting with some prominent Republicans and conservatives during 2016 and met some of the presidential candidates during the campaign.
I mean, Steve, it's certainly not every day that an alleged Russian spy agrees to a plea deal and starts cooperating with federal prosecutors.
Yeah, Anderson, I've heard a couple of commentators talk recently about 8 years ago, the group of 10 Russian illegals that were caught, arrested, and then returned in exchange for Russian spies. I think this is a little bit different. Maria Butina, in my mind, is not a formal illegal. She probably doesn't work directly for the Russian intelligence services, but she's rather something that we refer to as a co-optee. Somebody that has been approached by the Russian government, some aspects of it, we're not sure exactly who yet, in return for certain services here in the United States. And I think that's why you're seeing the legal path that she's going down right now, as opposed to some sort of, spy swap like we saw back in 2000 with the illegals at that time.
You're saying if she was actually, an intelligence officer or directly working for one of the intelligence services in Russia, that it would be more likely there would be some sort of a swap.
It would have gone very differently, I think, from a legal perspective. I don't think she would have been in jail for as long, and I think the Russians would have been much more aggressive about cutting some sort of diplomatic or some sort of spy deal.
Tom, I mean, of all the Trump associates who did have contact with Russians during the campaign, right now it's 16 by CNN's count. It's easy to get mired in the details of this, but kind of big picture, that's just not normal, is it?
So it is not normal, and that's what we've heard from people involved with presidential campaigns going back to Ronald Reagan. Of course, presidential campaigns have contacts with foreign officials. Trevor Potter, who was the counsel to the John McCain campaign in 2008, said, yes, there were contacts that the candidate and others had with foreign officials, but it was always done through cooperation with the State Department. There was transparency, and he added, never did the discussions have to do with personal business deals or with the candidate's personal political outlook.
Steve, talk a little bit about how the Russian intelligence services actually work. In particular, looking at Michael Cohen and his contacts with Russians, what we know about them so far. Is that sort of typical Russian operations?
It bears a lot of the hallmarks, Anderson. I mean, if you look at the information that was released on Friday by Mueller's office, just with regard to Cohen, it's a really nice nutshell. We know that the case in a nutshell. We know that the Russians were casting a wide net when they were looking at the Trump team and the Trump campaign. So, they knew that Cohen had the access because he was the personal lawyer, and then he also had an email, as we now know, that was associated with the Trump campaign. We knew that he was deeply in debt, so he had vulnerabilities, he had motivations that the Russians could take advantage of. And perhaps most importantly, and this is sort of a common thing with these over a dozen people now that have been associated with Russia, is the approach to him was quite reasonable. It wasn't like, hi, I'm from the Russian government, let's talk about what you can tell me about Trump. It was more, hey, let's talk about synergy between our governments. Let's talk about how important the American-Russian relationship was. And then
they actually use that word, synergy.
Path. Yeah, and that's an interesting way, but it's a very non-threatening way. It's an innocent way to start down that path.
Tom, I mean, the willingness of Trump aides to engage for what appears to be a wide variety of reasons. I mean, it certainly seems like Russia took notice of that early on and would have, from an intelligence standpoint, I mean, that's the kind of thing you would want to make the most of.
Yeah, well, one of the things that people involved with previous campaigns made clear to us is that the number of contacts and the nature were both unusual. So as Steve was just saying, you had some contacts that initiated around Trump Tower Moscow, but quickly a word like synergy gets imposed by one of the Russian nationals in touch with Michael Cohen. Felix Sater, who was working with Michael Cohen to build a Trump Tower Moscow, talked about it as an opportunity not only for economic gain and to achieve a long-sought goal by the Trump Organization, but also a chance to help boost Donald Trump's presidential ambitions, putting Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin perhaps on stage at a groundbreaking at the same time.
Tom Hamburger, I appreciate you being with us. Steve Hall as well, always. Thank you, guys. All right, let's check in with Chris, see what he's working on for Cuomo Prime Time at the top of the hour. Chris?
Hey, how you doing, my friend? So this is just such a wild atmosphere that we're living in. It's almost impossible to plan the show.
Yeah, I know.
Because things break late. Jim Acosta just puts out reporting saying that, yes, the president is ruminating / worrying / whatever verb you want to put in about what Democrats are going to do with respect to impeachment, that now he is worried. And it just so happened that tonight, part of the plan of the show was to give the president good reason to worry. This New York Times op-ed by a former White House in-house counsel about what obstruction is, that dovetails perfectly with what you were just saying with those two excellent guests about what is seen and unseen, what it could mean in obstruction, because that's a conversation we've had very little, because we don't really know anything about beyond the obvious with Comey. But now we're learning more. And those 16 contacts, associates with contacts, it's leading to a new tendency for this probe. And that must be alarming to this president. And a letter from over 40 former senators just came out to their colleagues in office now with all this language. I'm going to read it on the show. I've never read a letter like this before. So, and that just all happened in the last 15 minutes while I was looking at your handsome face.
All right, we'll see you in about 8 minutes for all of that, Chris. Appreciate it. Thanks. Little question. President Trump has a solid base of supporters, but is one portion of that base now maybe a little bit shakier after one of the latest presidential tweets? We'll explore that just ahead.
Anderson Cooper 360, brought to you by Alka-Seltzer Plus Power Max Gels.
New Alka-Seltzer Plus Power Max Gels. Concentrated power, 25% smaller pill. Max your cold relief with Alka-Seltzer Plus.
Voice command navigation with Waze. Wi-Fi.
Santa baby.
Wireless charging. 104 cubic feet of cargo room and seating for 8. Now that's a sleigh. Ford Expedition. Built for the holidays.
And for a limited time, get 0% financing plus $1,250 Ford credit bonus cash on Ford Expedition.
How to be a holiday hero with a few.
Step 1.
Gift a SodaStream.
Step 2.
Save up to 2,000 bottles a year by using one reusable bottle.
Step 3.
Raise a glass to the holidays. Make sparkling water and help save the planet, risk-free for 30 days. For the best deal of the season, go to SodaStream.com and save up to 40%. Get your SodaStream today. SodaStream can be found at these fine retailers.
Dick, I want you to be my VP. Oh, George, come on. Lone Ranger needs a Tonto.
Vice has more Golden Globe nominations than any movie this year.
This is going to be fun.
Including Christian Bale, Best Actor, Amy Adams, Best Supporting Actress, Sam Rockwell, Best Supporting Actor, and Best Picture of the Year.
I'll handle energy, military, foreign policy. I like that.
This isn't something that a vice president really does.
Huh? It is now.
Vice, rated R.
Why give to St. Jude? One, we freely share our treatments and scientific discoveries worldwide. And reason two, you're looking at her.
Donate now at stjude.org or shop wherever you see the St. Jude logo.
Shopping for our home on Wayfair is so easy. They should make a jingle. Wayfair, you make home shopping easy.
Wait, that sounds familiar.
These new tools make my shopping a breeze. I can plan my room while I'm falling asleep.
How about Wayfair, you got just what I need?
No, it's not good.
Sounds pretty good.
Discover easier home shopping at Wayfair, where it's find and unwind.
Wayfair, you've got just what I need.
Are you ready for it? Yes! I've been waiting for it. It's like CNN gone wild. My heat has just kicked in big time. TMI. Too much. That is a reason to tune in.
For those who peer into rock pools and gaze up at starry skies and seek out places with strange names and curious histories and quietly ponder the vastness before them, asking why, where, and how. This is Curiosity Stream, where you can stream incredible documentaries from the world's best filmmakers, on demand and on any device anywhere in the world. Exclusive programs updated weekly that explore the big questions in science, technology, history, and nature that reward your curiosity and feed your brilliant, inquisitive mind. Monthly subscriptions start at just $2.99 a month. Long live the curious. Start your free trial today at curiositystream.com.
The Lead with Jake Tapper, tomorrow starting at 4 Eastern on CNN.
President Trump continues to have a solid base of support among evangelical voters, but his belittling attack on former Secretary of State Rex Tillerson just may be the latest in a long line of tweets, contributing to some erosion of that base. It all began when Tillerson publicly chastised the president for being undisciplined, for not being especially fond of reading, and for requesting actions that in Tillerson's view were illegal. That led to this presidential tweet, and I'm quoting, "Mike Pompeo is doing a great job. I'm very proud of him. His predecessor, Rex Tillerson, didn't have the mental capacity needed. He was dumb as a rock, and I couldn't get rid of him fast enough. He was lazy as hell. Now it is a whole new ball game, great spirit at state." In the view of David Brody, the chief political analyst for the Christian Broadcasting Network, that might not have been the wisest move on the part of President Trump. David, over the weekend, you responded to the president's tweet saying, and I quote, "He won't lose diehards, but fence-sitting ones who are fed up with these kind of tweets will decide if he gets a second term." It's interesting to me, I mean, what he tweeted certainly was about, Tillerson, what certainly wasn't the worst thing in terms of insults he's ever tweeted about someone. What about it made you kind of think about that?
Well, it's a pile-on situation, Anderson. It's kindergarten stuff, and he's done this before. We know about that, so we can list all of them. But the truth of the matter is that this is piling up with fence-sitting evangelicals. And what I mean by that is that ultimately, those fence-sitting evangelicals are going to have to decide, do they want to support him again? And I'm not talking about the deplorable evangelicals, as I like to call them, the ones that he had at hello from the beginning. I'm talking about those ones that kind of held their nose a little bit.
I think the point you're making is an important one, because it's very easy, I think, for people to paint evangelicals with a very broad brush and sort of think about evangelicals as this one block of people, but obviously there are different philosophies in it, different outlooks, different points of view, and it's interesting that you're kind of breaking it down to, you know, fence sitters and people who are, you know, they were for Trump from the beginning.
Well, I think it's very dangerous, especially for the Trump administration, to think they just have all evangelicals, that they'll just be with them again. And look, this administration has done a lot for evangelicals. I don't think there's any question about it. But you can't assume that the whole pie is going to be with you in 2020, for sure. Now, look, having said all of that, Anderson, I have to tell you that the folks that are on the fence, at least from an informal poll on Twitter, but beyond that, word on the evangelical street, the folks that I travel in, basically say that they will still take actions over insults.
So bottom line, the kind of the point you've been making just in the last couple of days with some of the tweets you sent is that the administration should not take evangelicals for granted. That, you know, the percentage he got, there are a certain percentage of the percentage who voted for him, the 81 or so percent of evangelicals who went to the polls who voted for Trump. Some of them are what you say are fence sitters, and this cumulative effect could hurt Trump if they turn against him.
Yeah, I think that is a distinct possibility. Having said that, and here's the other part, and this is the important part as well, Anderson, there's a lot of evangelicals that did not actually vote for Trump in 2016, and those folks